Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Today I want to talk about something that I think plagues a lot of us. I feel that it's something that a lot of us go through, and it's time to discuss it. Are you addicted to unavailable people? And I think this is a very interesting concept because I think a lot of us out there from time to time or our entire life are addicted to people who are emotionally or mentally or physically unavailable. And I want to talk about how to know if you are addicted to what's unavailable, to what you can't have, and what you can begin doing about it right now. Because we can talk about it all day until the cows come home, right? But, some of us have been dealing with this an entire lifetime. It's getting old and it's time to move on. You'd like to settle down and you're just kind of wondering why you aren't able to. And so tonight I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the concept of what you can begin doing right now to change this addicted personality of being addicted to people that you can't have. Let's begin by talking about choosing those people who aren't available and what kind of categories do we find unavailable people in. And I want to begin first off with the first category. I know that you can read my mind on this. I know that you can read my mind on the first category of the unavailable people. Yes, what do we have for them, Johnny? Well, we have this really awesome gift because, they've read your mind. Yes, the first category is married. Yes, the married category. The people who aren't available. And the first one is married. It seems that it's very interesting how some of us choose to pick the married folks time and time again. We choose them to fall in love with. We choose them to have a relationship with. And I have several clients that I see weekly, bi-monthly, who are dealing with this, that they fell in love with someone that's married. In one way or another, the relationship began, and now they don't know what to do. And let me explain this, is that sometimes when you fall in love with a married person, it just happens. It just happens, but you put yourself in that position as well. Okay, so it's not just one-sided here. It took two people to tango. It takes two people to have sex together. It's not just one. Unless you're doing your own thing. But you know what I'm saying. So, when you're picking someone who's married, I believe that we're choosing that for a reason. And sometimes it can just happen. So if it's only one time in your life that you've fallen in love with a married person, you're probably okay. However, let's step back and discuss some of y'all who it's not the first time. It's not even the second time. And you don't know why everybody that you seem to like is married. How does this happen? Why are all the good ones taken? And this goes for both women and men, because I know both sides of that coin, especially in my own practice, who are dealing with those issues right now. And I know some folks out there will say, well, they shouldn't even been with a married person anyway. Those home wreckers, those damn home wreckers, just trying to ruin married people's lives. They should go to hell. Well, you know what? It's easier said than done. I'm not over here agreeing that this is the best thing in the world, but I'm saying that things happen. People have emotions. It's a human condition to fall in love, right? Love is one of those things that a lot of us don't realize is the basis of everything. And I'm not talking about sex. Love and sex are two different things. I know some of you don't agree with that, but it is true. You can love everybody. You can love everybody altruistically. You don't have to be having sex with every single person to love them. So, let's go back to the concept of falling in love with a married person. It happens a lot. And I presuppose the fact that it happens more than not because a lot of people love the idea of being in a relationship, but they're not totally sold on the whole package deal. Meaning, you know how we can go to Mexico and what have you, and you can get a hotel or you can get it all-inclusive? Some people would rather just do the hotel. They don't want the whole meal plan. They don't want all the well alcohol. They want just the hotel. They want to come and go as they please. And some people think that's getting the best of both worlds. And sometimes in the beginning of these relationships, people feel as though this is working. This is great. I only have to be there a certain amount of time, and the rest of the time I don't. Have my own freedom and all that stuff. And if that's the case, I'm not endorsing cheating or stepping out on the marriage. But what I'm saying is that works for you. Well, I mean, there's two people involved and there's families involved. So that's what y'all have to deal with your mental, emotional, value issues. Does this go against your values? Are you okay with it? But I find that a lot of folks begin being okay with dating a married man or a married woman, but that soon changes. And what I mean by that is in the beginning it might sound very cool and very sexy and very intriguing and very, like really, really, really sexual. I mean, a lot of people like the fact of having what they can't have. I mean, when you were a kid, remember your parents said, don't hang out with so-and-so. He's not a good kid or she's not a good kid. Who did you go out and hang out with all the time? That gave you the green light. You're like, I can't hang out with her. I am hanging out with her today. Same applies now for some folks. I mean, just because people are married, that's even more of a buyer's deal. You know what I mean? You're like, you look at that and you go, can't have it? Just watch this. Just check me out. And so what I'm talking about is, in the beginning, we might get involved with married folks, and it's very tantalizing and sexy and very charged with a lot of emotion and sexual drive. However, for some of these relationships, they begin to turn. And what I mean by turning is it's no longer a sexual deal, just sexual, okay? It is still sexual, but there's more to it, and there becomes more emotional connection and feelings to the people involved. And it's interesting because when that begins to happen, the person that's not married begins to feel left out. Okay, so the person that's not married begins to feel left out, and you ask why. Well, I'll answer that for you. They feel left out because guess what? The married person has to go home to the wife or to the husband and leave the lover behind. And in that process, the lover has to figure out what they're going to do. Are they going to stay at home and kind of wait for when they come back around? Or are they going to go try to find some more relationships or something else to take their mind off of it? And it's interesting because a lot of times people think this is going to work out, but I presuppose the fact that normally this gets quite emotional. Very hard to take. And it can be almost like a battle. And let me explain what this battle sometimes looks like. Okay, give you a good example. I've had several clients that have come into my office, and let's just say you have a male, meets a woman, they end up hanging out, they end up getting sexual together, they have sex, and they end up having feelings for one another. Now, whether or not he knew prior or knew after that she was married is a different story. And especially for men, a lot of men think, oh, this is cool, this is very wild, this is very interesting, and also I don't have to really deal with her that much because she's married. But over time, that male will want to normally, not all the time, I'm not saying this is 100% of the time, but 50 to 60% of the time, he's going to want to spend more time with her. And the more time she spends with her husband, the more angry and resentful he's going to become. And we kind of go down the timeline and we fast forward through this relationship, and eventually this conversation begins to erupt. Are you planning on staying married? Are you really in love with him? You see where I'm saying where this is going? Because it's human nature to want to win. It's a human nature thing for most of us to want to win whatever we go into. We want to take all or nothing. We want to go in and win everything or not do it at all. Just do it. Take everything. Risk it all. But as you see, it begins that way, kind of fancy-free and carefree, but eventually somebody's going to lock in on the feelings and the emotions, and it's going to happen. And I think it's interesting because when that takes place, it becomes this conundrum in both people's head. And let me explain how the married person feels in this relationship. So I've had clients that have come in and they say, hey, they've been married for 20 years. They met somebody wherever they met at work or whatever. And the person makes them feel alive and different than they've ever felt. And I said, okay, that's cool. So explain to me what you're planning on doing as far as devoting your time between two people. And they're like, oh, I got it all figured out. All figured out. I'm gonna do this in the daytime between this and see them at lunchtime. I'll be home. Well, anyway, they have this whole plan set up, right? Well, the plan goes out the window pretty quick. And what happens to that married person is they begin to no longer live a life of their own. Now, and let me paint the picture for you. Now it's gone from having some fun to this is no longer really fun, this is part of my life, to now you are in two specific relationships. Basically, kind of in a way, being married to two people at one time, but none of the other people know about each other. So you see where I'm going with this. So think about it. So you're married to two different people. You're doing this whole relationship thing. You got all this stuff going on. And on top of that, you have somewhat of a life. You work. You have a lot of things going on. You probably work a day job. You got all this stuff happening, unbeknownst to the fact that you might have children. You might have to take them places. So think about it. Now you're down to a little bit of time per day of your own. And what does that begin to look like? What does that begin to look like? And what I presuppose is that eventually the second relationship becomes like a second job. Now, I'm not saying that the sex is not good and the feeling of doing something wrong isn't interesting. But what I am saying is that this becomes another thing that you have to do. And so when we're talking about how to know if you're addicted to what you can't have, the first thing is somebody that's married. And I mean, it's like you want a relationship, but you really don't, so you're going to self-sabotage yourself, get with somebody that's married, and then eventually they're going to break up with you, or you're going to get caught, or something's going to go down, and that's it. Because out of all my practice, I mean, literally, 99.9% of everybody that's come in here, if they got caught with a lover by their spouse, they did not marry or continue the relationship with the lover. Did you hear what I said? They did not continue the relationship with the lover. And the reason for it is I think that it brings up bad memories, but it also feels bad because most people don't want to have a relationship based on that. And also the whole relationship is really based on a lie. And it's hard to deal with that. And I've had clients who have come in and they did marry, they were having an affair with a married man, and they ended up, the married man ended up divorcing his wife, and then they got together, and the woman always questioned if he was cheating. Because she met him and they were cheating. Do you see what I'm saying? And so the relationship's really never been that good because every time he went out of town or every time he was late from work, she assumed that he was cheating. And I'm not saying that he wasn't. I'm just saying that that was the assumption that she thought every single time. So we're choosing people who are unavailable. So first off, married. The second is in a relationship. They're not necessarily married, but they're in a relationship. That to me is unavailable. And I understand if you meet somebody and they just are so interesting and they really grab your attention and they're mesmerizing and you're like, wow, I really could see myself with that person. And then you find out they're married or they're in a relationship. At that point in time, I think if it's not just for the sex, you've got to sit there and back out. Because I think it's just going to cause pain and suffering on both sides. And the biggest thing, this is the biggest kicker that a lot of people don't realize, is like I was saying earlier, things that are off limits are very sexy or very interesting or very edgy and very amazing, and they keep your interest. Well, think about this. Let's just say that they end up divorcing their husband or their wife, or they end up breaking up their relationship. Is this behind-the-scenes relationship still as sexy? No. No, it's not. It's not at all. And I'll tell you one thing, the sex will start going too because you're allowed to have it. You are allowed to have it, so that whole heart racing and sweating and thinking about them, that's going to go away because you know what? You can have it anytime you want. You can have it anytime you want, so where is the attraction then? And some of you out there choose to have sex with people that are unavailable because you want just that. You want to have that crazy sex that you can't get in a consistent relationship. And it is hard. I will go on and write that out. I will sign the doctor's note on that it is difficult in marriages to keep the sex electric. And why that is because you constantly see them. They're there all the time. You're married. You're allowed to have it. Some of you become very, very close friends with your spouses. And it's like you kind of have like that line of demarcation of, how sexy can we have it without feeling weird because you're my friend. I mean, there's various layers of difficulty when you're working to keep the sex alive in a marriage. And, honestly, I believe that, relationships that are taboo is really the only relationship of sex that actually works. Because over time, it's never the same as the first time, right? Over time, things start to lose their luster. And I'm not saying that it gets bad. I'm not saying that it's crappy sex. I'm saying, though, it's consistent. You can always have it. There's no barriers to it. Nobody's telling you no. And so there's none of that really edgy, hot, sexy, oh my God, this is illegal, this is bad. We're all going to we're going to get our ass kicked if we get found out. Oh my God, what's going to happen? We're going to be outed by society. Think about it. That is where some people like to have sex with married people because they get that whole wild, emotional, amazing sex that they don't think that they can have. However, for people who are getting into relationships with married people and people in relationships, this is directly related to how you are addicted to what you can't have. Now, if it's just the sex, and very few and far between can people say that, because most of the time there's a lot more to it, because sex for women, by the way, normally translates into emotion. There's not many women out there who can have sex with a man more than 3 times, and they don't have any emotional connection with them. Did you hear that? Most people, after 3 times, have an emotional connection. After they've had sex with 3 times with the same person, can develop an emotional connection. Some women can develop it the very first time, and men take a little longer normally, depending on how connected they are to their emotions. However, most of us don't see the difference between sex and love. The next concept of how you know that you're addicted to unavailable people is they might not be married, they might not be in a long-term relation, but guess what? They live far, far, far away. Right? How many of you out there, raise your hands right now, have been in relationships where they live really far away and you're like, wow, I fell in love with this girl, man. Oh my God. She's great. Yeah, I met her down at the Ritz-Carlton. She was in town for a wedding. Yeah, I mean, and the sex, oh my God, the sex was amazing. She met me after the wedding, and woo! And then that next morning, oh my God. Yep, she's back in Baltimore. Yep, I'm down in Austin. Yep, I hope to see her soon. Think about it. Okay, yeah, a long distance relationship is again another one of those against all odds, right? And really, how far is this relationship going to go? I mean, if she lives in Baltimore and you live in Austin, Texas, how many times do you think you're going to see each other? And based on that sexual activity in a 24 to 36 hour window, how deep of a relationship have you created? And the long distance thing is always very interesting. I had a client in my office just recently who had moved here and couldn't seem to find a guy. And every guy that she met when she was out and about was in town from he lived out of here, didn't live in the state or didn't live in this country. And those were the only guys that she seemed to connect with. That to me is a big siren to let you know that you are addicted to unavailable people. You're addicted to unavailable people. If you're picking people that don't live anywhere near the area, I mean, think about it. When you're looking for a car, right? Let's say you go on Auto Trader, right? And you're looking for, I don't know, what kind of car are you looking for? Let's just say you're looking for a 69 Camaro. You're looking for a 69 Camaro, and you know how you can put in your zip code, right? And it says within 25 miles, within 50 miles, within 100 miles, within 250 plus miles. I mean, if it's past that and it's a relationship, you like unavailable women or you like unavailable men. That's just the way it is, okay? Because you can't meet one person in the city you live in. You know how many millions of people live in most of these cities? You can't find one. You can't find one unattached, lives in the area person. It's not a lot. You're not looking for a lot. It's not like you're looking for a needle in a haystack. There's a lot of people there, okay? There's a big ocean out there full of people, right? That whole concept that there's more fish in the sea. But what about this concept? You're addicted to unavailable people, and so you're constantly picking women or men who are just divorced or just widowed. And you usually have a better chance with a widow just because a lot of people don't want to live alone. You know, the last thing they want to do is go through life alone, especially men. After a man loses his wife, for the most part, about 95% of the time, he's definitely looking for somebody to live with. Not necessarily because they have to have all this sex, but because they don't want to be alone. If they've been married for a long period of time, it's scary. They like companionship. They've never really been alone, so it's kind of a scary feeling, and they're dealing with the sadness of losing their spouse. However, there's a lot of you out there that jump on people after they just got divorced. And that's really no good. That's really no good. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because when people get divorced, they are hurt usually. Even if they were the one that asked for it, there's still a lot of issues, okay? Because divorce is a big deal. It's right up there with the death of a spouse. I mean, when you get divorced, it's like the death of the relationship. And to come in and be the first relationship after the divorce, you're asking for trouble. You're asking to be beat down and walked over and left for whoever else, for the next person or the next person that they meet that they'll end up probably marrying. And why I say this is that when people are freshly divorced, they are unable to make healthy decisions. They are unable to make healthy decisions because they have a lot of baggage that they are holding on to that's creating a problem. And they might be wonderful to hang out with. They might be fun. They might be great in bed. But the point is that they are probably 95% of the time not ready to take on a relationship. And that's why I tell clients when they meet somebody who is just divorced, I say, wait it out. I know that this is hard and this is a lot of self-restraint, but literally, if you can, in those situations when you meet somebody like that, and this is the way you could get anybody that was just divorced, I'm telling you right now, this is a golden nugget of opportunity for you. If you've met somebody who is just recently divorced that you really, really, really like, okay, like really like, if you want to get them no matter what at some point in time, and do the right thing, literally look them in the eye and say, hey, I really care about you, but you're just recently divorced. And you know what? I'm going to give it some time, and I'll look you up in about 6 months to a year. And if you're around and you're single, let's go out sometime. And I really care about you, and I think you're amazing. But I'm going to give you some time, and, if I'm still available, great. If I'm not, well, it is what it is. But I think that we owe it to ourselves to give it some time. And if you can have that kind of self-restraint, I'm telling you one thing. They might go out and find stuff, but they're going to be thinking about you. Because people are always interested in folks that don't give them what they want. It's a human condition to, when somebody holds something back, you want it so bad. You know what I mean? It's like they want it so bad because they can't have it. And this goes back to the concept of being addicted to unavailable people. You want it so bad. So let's talk about, instead of being into the whole unavailable, let's talk about what happens when somebody who likes unavailable people goes out, dates, gets in a relationship with someone who is actually available. Because this is another telltale sign to determine if you are addicted to unavailable people. So you go out and you end up meeting somebody who is available, is not married, isn't in a relationship, isn't recently divorced, isn't recently widowed, lives in the same place you live in, isn't a long-term far away, lives in another country, none of that. They are available, they live near you, they're within 10 to 20 miles, and gosh, you got all this going on, and they've never been married, and they don't have all this stuff going on. Okay. So what normally happens with people who are addicted to unavailable people is they see this person who happens to be available. They see them first off as being needy. They're always calling me. They're always texting me. God, Jesus. Oh my God, that's her again. Oh, that's her again. What am I going to say? Golly. Does she work? God, she's needy. I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I can go down this road. I just don't know if I can do this. And so the first thing we see of people who are available is that we believe that they're needy. They're just downright needy. I don't know if I can handle this. They're around too often. And they're always around. It's like, golly. Just hate when somebody's always around and available to spend time with me. Why can't they give me a hard time and hang up the phone? I'd appreciate that a lot more. And it's interesting when we find them as needy and we see them as always being around, we take for granted the fact that they are because we let it get on our everlasting nerves. Because we like it when we have to work for something or when we don't get it. We see them as boring. We see them as boring. They're kind of lame. They're not as exciting as my usual girlfriends or boyfriends. They're not as exciting or as, dangerous or intoxicating. She or he just doesn't do it for me. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. I just can't put my finger on it. But you know what? If I was to think, I don't know, maybe it's the way they dress. Maybe it's the way she laughs has got just so on my freaking everlasting nerve. Who laughs like that? That's got to be it. That's got to be what I can't stand about her because, she's gorgeous. She's got it all, but there's just something. Oh, God, I don't know. Maybe it's her. Maybe it's how many times she flosses. There's got to be something wrong with her. Just doesn't do it for me. When was the last time you said she just doesn't do it for me or he just doesn't do it for me? Or better yet, God, she just seems kind of common. She just seems kind of common. Like, she's not really one of a kind. She's like a lemming. I can find a million like her. It's just not doing it for me. She's kind of needy. She's always around. I'm kind of bored already. I don't know. Maybe she's just not that deep. Maybe we don't like the same things. And that's what happens when we like and love the concept of being with unavailable people. The people who are actually available become needy in our eyes. They're around too often. They're boring. They don't do it for us. And they seem quite common. So now that we've answered yes to a lot of these concepts, you get what I'm saying. Now let's talk about why this is. Why are we addicted to unavailable people? Because we can figure this out. So now that we know that a lot of us are addicted to unavailable people and unavailable situations because it's more interesting, it's wild, it's sexy, it's on fire, it's on fuego. Now that we know that, why is it? Okay, so here we go. Ashley, the therapist, comes into play right now. We look back to our childhood. We look back to our childhood and we begin to analyze abandonment issues. For a lot of us who were abandoned as children, felt abandoned by our parents, family, friends, we have a tendency of living that way. And what I mean is that when we deal with a cycle of abandonment, for the most part, we don't change that cycle. So think about a family, like we see a lot of times, right? Like spousal abuse, right? And in a spousal abuse situation, women are beating up men all the time now, by the way. I didn't realize that for a while, but now I get it. But let's use the old atypical example, and we'll switch it around, okay? Like, the guy's beating up the wife, and then if you go back in the lineage, the father of the guy beat up the mother. You see what I'm saying? There's a cycle, right? And in that cycle, nothing changes. Even though everybody wants to be different and doesn't want it to happen, they don't change it. And what I'm saying is that in childhood, when we're dealing with abandonment issues, instead of later on being very there and always around and all that kind of stuff, it's like we take on this concept of we will abandon before they abandon me. I'm not going to stick around for them to leave me. Hell no. Hell no. I'm not going to get abandoned again. I'm out of here. So when we look back to our childhood and we realize our abandonment issues, that is a real big key to the reasons why we choose unavailable people. And I know that sounds like a conundrum because if you've been dealing with abandonment and you're choosing people that are unavailable, eventually they're going to abandon you. And I get it, but do you see how the cycle always continues? And do you see why it's sexy and addictive to people who've been abandoned because they're accustomed to it? Do you see what I'm saying? So you would think it would be the opposite, right? But no, it's not. It's just like women that look for men that are like their dads and their dad was never there. You would think that they would understand that that's the type of person you don't want, but that's the kind of man they're constantly going after. It's like you have to reverse your entire thought process of what you were raised to believe and actually go out there and change your values and construct a concept of who's actually a good quality person, okay? And how to be a good quality person to them. So first off, we have that abandonment cycle. And some of us are suffering from that. We've dealt with it our whole life. We had to overcome it, but yet we really haven't overcome it because we're constantly putting ourselves in a position of abandonment. And a lot of times we're leaving them and abandoning them before they abandon us. The next thing is our past relationships. Were you burned in a past relationship? Were you hurt? Were you tossed aside? Were you abandoned in a past relationship? And you did everything right. Were you a person that was there and cared and, made breakfast and made dinner and was loving and did everything, and the next thing you know, somebody's walking all over you, crapping in the house basically, and then tells you to go F off and it's a done deal. And it hurts, right? And you're like, I've been abandoned. I did everything for this person. And they just crapped all over it. And in that situation, that can really make you feel scarred. And it can scare you for putting it all out there. And that's where I see a lot of clients become kind of, jaded maybe a little bit, but also kind of gun shy and scared of giving their all in a relationship. And they'd rather kind of have these superficial relationships or these relationships that are doomed from the beginning because they can't really happen. I mean, how many times, what's the percentage of the person actually leaving their spouse? And if they actually do leave their spouse, are you going to still want them? And even better yet, even if you still want them and you get married to them, will you always wonder if they're cheating on you too? Oh, man. The triple threat, she says. See? I know. It's a slippery slope. Nobody wins in this deal. So think about it. Is that a past relationship that you got hurt? What about if you're scared of true love? What about if you've really never really experienced true love and you're scared of it? You don't know what it's going to do to you. Like you love that chase. You're so addicted to the chase that you don't know if you even want the real deal, or you don't even know if you can deal with the real deal, because that could change absolutely everything. That might change your entire lifestyle. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared for Jehovah's return? Because if you're not, I love Friday. I love that. The original Friday was awesome. But think about it. Are you prepared and able to take on true love? Real emotion, the real deal? Or is the chase what you have not necessarily in love with, but what you're kind of sticking with? You know what I'm saying? The chase. And some of us out there haven't even developed an emotional basis to be able to love somebody else because we don't love ourselves. We totally do not love ourselves at all. We can't stand ourselves. How can we love somebody else if we can't stand our own self? My God. I don't love them. Well, you know what? You got to take a look inside and ask yourself, do I love myself? Because if I truly love myself, I wouldn't be doing this chase thing all over town. I'll tell you that. I'd let this go by the wayside and find another way around it. Because chasing people your whole life is a job. And right when the chase is over, you run away. And the reason why you take off is because of why. It's not that interesting. You don't know what to do with it after. And you know what? You usually pick the wrong people because you're too busy trying to lure them in to get what you want. Now, last but not least, the childhood and the abandonment issues, the past relationship that burns you, or you're scared of true love and don't know what to do with it. Maybe perhaps you don't love yourself, and so how could you love someone else? And this is very deep stuff here. This is deep stuff here. But lastly, what about control? Control. It's a 7-letter word called control. And control is you want to always be in control. Hence why you like this unavailable. Hence why you like unavailability when it comes to relationships, because you like to be in control. And I know that sounds backwards, but it's true. And so it all goes back to A, B, and C, the childhood, the past relationship, the scared of the true love, goes back into the concept of control. Because at any time, you can overcome these issues. At any time, you can deal with it. But you want to end the relationship. You want to say when it's good. You want to say when it's over. Do you see what I'm saying? And in real relationship, there is no thing like control. I've been married for over 12 years. And neither one of us have control in this relationship. And neither one of us are looking for it. Because you know what? It's an illusion. Control is a way of dealing with your mind that says that you're either not good enough, or this relationship's doomed, or you're not going to deal with this, or you're picking someone that's unavailable because it's easier for you. And it's really all about the sex, right? There is no love. There is no love. It's all about sex. So what do we do about it? Once we know that we have these issues, and once we know that this is part of our life, and once we realize that we have chosen unavailable people for the most of our life, what can we do about it? Well, the first thing that we can do is to forgive the past. We can forgive our past. Because, even if it happened when you were a child, abandonment, or a relationship where somebody left you, you're still holding anger, not just with the other person, but you hold anger with yourself. And let me explain why. So, for example, you couldn't make it work. Or, for example, like a child, like a parent abandoning a child, they feel sad about the parent abandoning them, but then they feel that there was something wrong with them that made the parent abandon them. Do you see what I'm saying? So the child automatically thinks, well, if dad left, then I must be a bad kid, therefore dad left, right? Because our mind has to make these, it has to basically create something and then fill in the blank and allow it to be a finished thought. So dad left, right? Dad left and didn't come back. Instead of just saying, okay, dad left and didn't come back, we don't do that. We add all these reasons in our mind of why dad left or why mom left. Think about it. Instead of just knowing that they left and that's part of it, we don't know exactly why. We as children wanted to take responsibility and felt like we were part of the problem. And so not only do we feel sad about the situation, but we haven't forgiven ourselves because this whole time, throughout our whole life, we have assumed that we were the reason why mom or dad left. Okay. The next thing that we want to forgive ourselves, even in a relationship, so let's go past the parent thing. Let's go into a relationship that went awry, or you got divorced, separated, and you go, I couldn't even, hold a marriage together. Okay, see, that's one of them. I can't be in a relationship. I'm not healthy enough to be in a relationship. You got all these things going on in your head. You got to forgive yourself of what happened in the past because it was a two-way street. A relationship doesn't break up because of one person. It has to have both people agree on it. You see what I'm saying? And so you have to begin to forgive yourself from the past of what happened. In a relationship where somebody leaves and you go, oh my God, what did I do wrong? I thought I was the best husband or the best boyfriend or the best girlfriend or the best wife. What did I do wrong? Oh God, there's something wrong with me. What am I going to do? You see what I'm saying? And so your mind plays these tricks and then you begin to feel lesser than, not good enough. And so a lot of times at that point in time, you walk into relationships where you're already walking into a situation because you define yourself as not being good enough, not having any value. So you're typecasting yourself and putting yourself in relationships where you're going to get hurt again. You can also realize that control is a figment of your imagination. Control is not real. Just because you feel like you control a relationship doesn't mean anything. It's actually quite sad. Because control is not a real thing. Control is manipulation, especially at this level. And that power that comes from manipulation is very weak. And so when you're manipulating somebody or you're trying to control them, not good things come out of that. It's the same as if you have children and you can try to control your kids on every step of the way. They're going to fight back. They're going to do the opposite of what you want them to do. Usually. Because you can't control another person. You can only control what you do. You can't control really what other people do. And I understand that there's a financial control. There's some people in relationships where they hold all the financial cards. And so in that behalf, if the woman or the man is okay with that, they will allow that person to control them financially. If it's a mental or emotional thing, the same. But is that what you want? Do you want someone who can be controlled? Is that an even playing field? Is that a relationship worth having? I don't know about that. And last but not least, we got to get past the pain and get past our negative self-talk that keeps us from fulfilling and amazing relationships. So this past pain, either with family or past relationships or past love, leads to negative self-talk. It's my fault. They left for some reason. I can't hold a marriage. I can't keep a marriage. I'm always going to be lonely. I'm going to be a cat lady. All these things in your head, all this negative self-talk that keeps you from even being able to find a fulfilling relationship because you're too busy sabotaging yourself with negative self-talk that's going to constantly get in the way of your happiness and lead you into relationships that are unavailable, that will lead to more pain and suffering and more negative self-talk of you telling yourself how bad you are. You're never going to get married. This is never going to happen for you. Or you're always going to meet these awful women. Or you're always meeting these fast women who always sleep around. It's the same cycle. So it's time for you now to begin to let go of your past pain, to recognize the negative self-talk in your head about any relationship that's fallen apart on your watch, even your parents or anything like that, we fill in the blank, okay? And when we fill in that blank, we cause pain to ourselves that lives forever until we get rid of that cycle. So if you have a friend or yourself who is addicted to unavailable people, it's time to wake up and recognize and begin to work on these personal issues so that one day you will find a relationship that you will love and that will love you and that will support you and you will support them as well as give you joy and happiness. And remember one thing, though. You can only make yourself happy. No one else. No one else. And I find that interesting. And this is just a last thought caveat. The golden nugget. Don't buy into the hype of getting married makes you happy, okay? You've got to be happy yourself. There is no two halves that make a whole. No, that is not real. Two whole people need to come into a relationship to have two people in the relationship. Not two halves, not three quarters. No. And so you've got to be a whole person. Consciously aware, authentic, understanding past pains, overcome those pains. Realize when you act from negative self-talk and realize when you're doing things to damage yourself or to self-sabotage yourself and rectify those things and stop that cycle today. It's up to you because guess what? You have the opportunity of choice and you have the opportunity of creation. Nobody can take your opportunity of choice away. Only you can. So stay tuned. More awesome shows coming your way. Check out Ashley Burgess, ashleyburgess.com, the website of ashleyburgess.com. Also, go on and tweet me at Ashley Burgess. Tweet me because I want to hear what you have to say about unavailable relationships, as well as go to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess and tell me what you think about this podcast because I want to hear your thoughts on unavailable people and relationships. Stay tuned because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, Ashley Burgess. We'll be back this time in 3 shakes.